You're listening to Your Rivers Are Wrong, the podcast.
Good morning, or evening, or afternoon, whenever you may be. Welcome back to Season 8 of the Your Rivers Are Wrong podcast. I'm one of your hosts. My name is Dante.
And I'm one of the other hosts. My name is Merle.
And we're here, as we are every week, to talk about the wonderful whimsies of world building, the arts and aesthetics of setting up a setting, and telling stories born from it. We're back in business.
Good to be back, huh? Back in biz, that's right.
I love how when we take these breaks, it's always very time fluid, because when we record these, it's not necessarily when other people receive them. So it's like, hey, we've been on break for this amount of time, but they don't really know exactly.
Nope.
It's like it's a different break.
That's right. Totally different time schedules. Yep.
You might be taking a break from like March to April, and then their break might be like May to June, and it's entirely separate. But hopefully, however long it's been since our last episode, welcome back. It's nice to see you again.
Yeah.
Nice to hear from you again, actually.
We're glad you're still here.
We could do little introductions as we do at the start of every season.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Dante. I not only edit this podcast, the Your Rivers Are Wrong podcast, but I also have a YouTube channel, which is called Wintry RPG. Previously a channel that only focused on D&D centric content, now branched off into every other tabletop RPG, trying to learn new lessons from each one and really be a student of how story is dissected and told in different forms, formats, and mediums and genres. And it's a lot of fun. Other than that, I have a long history in video editing. And yeah, that's about it. I'll pass it to my co-host.
That's such a great intro. Holy hell. Hello, I'm also here. My name is Merle, as you might have already known. I do a lot of stuff. I write, I illustrate, and do graphic design freelance. I'm currently still working at a literature festival. There's lots of stuff going on. I'm part of a kind of artist collective since, I guess, this year officially, which is kind of nice, called Frankly Collective, with one of my, I guess, our good friends, Cherry.
Friend of the show.
Yeah, good friend of the show. I mean, what else do we say? Yeah, I mean, we've been doing this for a while, so I feel like I have to get used to that people might still be able to tune in, even though that's obviously just how podcasts work. But it's great that you're still here and that we can still hang out and talk about stories and worlds, because we love both of them a lot.
Oh yeah, and one of our little charms is that we live across the Atlantic Ocean.
Oh, that's right.
I live in New York in the United States of America.
And I don't. I live in the Netherlands, which is all the way on the other side.
Yeah, so this is kind of our weekly catch-up with each other.
That's right.
As well as tackling new storytelling, world-building topics.
Exactly.
But before we get into that, just wanted a little catch-up on things that we have experienced in the last 2-ish months. I think it's been 6 weeks-ish, actually.
Been a while, yes.
I'm going to touch very lightly on 2 dramatic developments in my life. First one being,
go ahead, yeah.
The first one being, I got to witness a solar eclipse with my family. I got to see the, what is that? The full, oh my gosh, I forgot the word where it fully covers the sun. But I got to see the moment where it fully covers. Yeah. Golly, I've already forgot. It was a big word that I used to say a lot back when it was happening, but now I've forgotten it because it's been a while. But basically, the moon fully covered over the sun, and I got to witness that in person for 4 minutes.
Totality? Is that it?
Totality. That's the word. Totality.
Thanks,
Thank you so much.
I feel like it's important because this is like a life achievement. So I feel like the word needs to be in here. Yeah. I'm glad we got that out of the way.
So whenever I talk about the solar eclipse, it becomes my whole personality for at least a minute, but I'll try to paraphrase it. Basically, it felt like seeing a concert held by the world that only happens once every 20 years because it's not coming back to the US for 20 years. So when everybody was there, video doesn't do justice to how cool it looked with the lights coming off of the sides of the moon. Everybody in the park that I was at was like screaming and yelling and crying. It really felt like everybody was turning into werewolves. And I got a full like out of body experience of like who is in my life currently and who will be in my life 20 years from now will be drastically different. And I felt like it was a milestone in my life to
very
kind of
meta.
Yeah. Anchor me into this world and beyond it. So.
And you made a whole road trip out of it, I heard.
Yeah, we did.
Which is
we
the
got
best
to
idea.
We got to go to Maine and Vermont and New Hampshire because we just wanted to eat a lot of good food and see a lot of cool sights. So
amazing. I mean, this is a very cool character trait. Like, I literally can't say anything that's cooler than that.
Like, I think I said to you when I was all up in the emotions of it, I said to you that it felt like a moment when religions are born.
Yeah.
Like
I
witnessing
remember
the
that
solar
shit.
eclipse.
Yeah, that's such a line.
It's a testament to how powerful of a moment it felt
Wild.
in that space and time. Anyway, not to dwell on that too long, my second very important life event that sounds like it should be related, but I promise you it isn't, is that I got laser eye surgery.
Now that you put it out there, yeah. Wait, that's very funny, actually. Like, oh my God, I looked at it too hard. Now my eyes are dead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got kind of worried that staring at the sun would ruin my eye vision, but no, I've actually had glasses for 25 years, and as of this week, I got eye surgery, which is supposed to be entirely corrective, and I shouldn't, fingers crossed, shouldn't need glasses after this. Anyone who tells you PRK surgery is not a big deal and is only 4 to 5 days of recovery, they're lying, they're being deceitful. It is a very painful, agonizing process for at least minimum 2 days.
Oh God, you're so hurt.
I was writhing in bed like a worm.
Emotionally and physically.
It's so terrible. Like right now, I'm wearing all but the lights in my room are off except for one. I'm wearing sunglasses.
Yeah, because this was like a few days ago, right? Like this is not like the solar eclipse like a few weeks, but it's like fairly recent. You're still in gremlin mode. Yeah.
We're recording this on a Friday. I got the surgery on Monday and I'm still like suffering the effects of it. I won't fully recover until like a week or a month from now. So right now, I'm playing a little game to see if I can record a podcast while blind. So
it's a challenge, folks. Welcome. You're part of the experience.
Yeah, I won't belabor how painful the experience has been for me, but it's certainly been, this is a pun, eye-opening.
Pun incoming.
I'm sorry. Whoops, my bad. I didn't write that down.
I'm glad.
But yeah.
Glad.
Anyway, tossing it to you so I can rest my eyes for a second. What's going on with you in this past 6 weeks, 2 months?
I feel like we're doing like a whole 3-act play by now. It's kind of wild. On my side, didn't have that much crazy going on. I mean, at least not like physically life-altering kind of crazy like you have on your side, which I fully respect. What has happened? I feel like there's been a lot of good like new freelance opportunities on my side, which is the collective I talked about just now, Frankly Collective. We applied for an open call and we got published in we will be published in a magazine that's very cool and the people are very nice. So that's very exciting. So we're working on that and I'm very, very looking forward to summer. And well, anyone who's either been in or from the Netherlands knows that the weather is famously unreliable here. So I feel like the past few weeks, as Dutch people do, whenever there's any sunny hours or days out, people just flock outside like animals. And I am one of those people. It's been very great to just sit in the park and eat food outside and not worry about whether you will get rained on by the world. So that's been quite beautiful. Given me very good summer vibes. And also I've had a little May holiday break simultaneously to our podcast break. And I went to one of the little islands in the north of Holland, which is very great. And I felt like an absolute nerd just bird watching and just hiking all the time. And it was great. So, pretty good stuff. A little bit of ups and downs, but as it goes.
Have you gotten to the point where you can recognize the birds you see, like by name?
So here's the deal. Originally, we didn't have a bird watching plan because I went with my mom, who's the greatest mom in the world. And it was very great. We went for like 5 days, I think. Yeah. And the weather was, as I said before, very sunny and surprisingly beautiful. But it's the small island. So there's not a lot to do. They have like a lighthouse. They have literally one street of shops and that's it.
Okay.
Like we've had dinner at the same place twice because it's just literally nothing else. It's very humbling and nice. But it also means that the major event on the island is just taking long walks in the nature.
That's good.
Beachy nature areas on the side of it. So we basically just took one of those free hiking carts you can get at a hotel, and on the back of the hiking cart was a lot of birds with check marks. And we were like, wow, I feel like it's a challenge. I feel like the universe has presented us with an activity now. I feel like we've been very excitedly, as I said, nerding out over birds. And by the time that you do like 4 hikes like that, it's very nice because all the birds you see are sort of getting in your memory, which is kind of great. So now I know all the birds and vegetation on the island that I'll probably just visit maybe once again in my life.
That's great.
Yeah, the little things, the littlest things. I would say.
Sticks with you,
but very wholesome. Yeah, good stuff.
Great. So with that, let's jump into what we do on this podcast. Every week we choose a topic relating to world building or storytellings, usually both. And we end the episode with a prompt relating to that topic, usually, I think. Almost always now.
Did we ever not do it? I think we always did.
No. There were sometimes we just had some these random prompts towards the end of the episode.
We just
lately we try to be we try to be respectful to the topic and actually build off of it.
Yeah, fair enough.
So today's topic, which I'm opening with, is going to be reputation. The topic of reputation.
Wow, that's a good one.
This topic has been on my mind for a while because amidst my 4 days of suffering, one of many things I tried to do to relieve the pain is listening to an audiobook. I'm like, hey, I'm going to be in bed.
The one thing you can do. Yeah.
It was one of a few things I tried. If I'm going to be in bed for 72 hours, might as well listen to a book.
Yeah.
So the book I chose was the book called Mistborn, The Final Empire, which is the first in the Mistborn series.
That's a famous one, no? Yeah.
Yeah, by Brandon Sanderson. A lot of my friends tried to get me into it.
Dope.
And I listened to the first 4 chapters of it until I had to stop because because while I will say my first impressions of the book are favorable, it seems like an interesting read. The first 4 chapters could not stop talking about this really cool guy called Calcier. How awesome he is, all the cool things he's done, all the cool things he can do, all his cool scars, all his cool powers. Before he walked into the room, and all of the cool things that were spoken about him were justified because he gave off the impression of cool. And so he was very much a character whose reputation very much preceded him.
Right.
Just kind of walked as its own individual being before he did.
Center of the world kind of energy. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I didn't really get past that point because I wanted to know more about the main character and that wasn't happening. So I just kind of
I was wondering if he was the main character, but I guess not. Yeah.
No, he's not. He's not. Maybe he's one of 2, but he's not the main character. So as far as I know, he could be in the future. But so today, the major questions I want to ask, as we ourselves consider writing our own characters for our own stories, and I wrote these down, the questions are, what is the significance of reputation as a world-building tool? What does a character's reputation speak of their future potential? And does reputation serve a different purpose in a living story versus a pre-written one? So in our context, a tabletop RPG, an ongoing story versus a story that's already been written as per the Mistborn series.
Yeah, improvisation prone or prepped.
I want to ask you your impressions on the concept of reputation and how it plays a role in our story writing process.
I love this topic, and I think all of the questions are so nice. They're very great because all of those things, I think, very much influence the way you deal with something like reputation. It reminded me a little bit of the episode we did a little while ago where I sort of just fangirled the whole episode about the story of Rebecca, which is a book and then became a film and then a musical. And I was super into that for obsessively, as I do, for a little while.
Right.
It was the story of Rebecca, who's the wife of a very wealthy sort of landowner or man of the house, And Rebecca was dead and everyone else knew about it except for the main character. And she was basically she had the biggest reputation ever because there was so much mystery surrounded by her and the whole story is named after her, but we don't see her character once. We only read her through other people's takes on her, basically, or information. And it's a little bit different if we talk about a reputation in a topic where it's not necessarily about your character's absence or not, because I think that was more the previous focus of when we talked about this kind of stuff. But I think it's a great question regardless, because almost every character, unless you're doing something very abstract, is kind of dealing with their outward image versus their inner, well, either just how they are versus how the world sees them.
Right.
It's always this balance. I mean, it's like real life. Who are you kidding? Wow.
Wait,
it's such a metaphor for real living people. But I think it's nice to see how the balance shifts depending on what kind of character you write. And if it's a character like, I already forgot the name, Caesar.
Calcium. Yes, Calcium. Calcier.
We're gonna hate so much Brandon Sanderson people.
Hey, any Brandon Sanderson listeners out there, tell me if it gets better.
We still love you. Yeah, all stories are valid. Wait, what was his name though?
I had to Google how to spell his name because I only listened to the audiobook.
Oh, so right.
I didn't know how to spell it. Calcier.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. That makes more sense than calcium.
Calcium?
But if it's a character like that, or I was also thinking Gaston or something from, the
that's
sort
right.
of the cheesy example, I guess. But it's a similar vibe, right? Where basically their whole character exists out of their reputation. So the interesting character arc that sometimes happens in these kind of stories and sometimes don't is whether or not you can get to know their inner workings, or if that character is able to sort of think about themselves outside of their reputation, right? That's always a sort of, doesn't have to be a challenge, but it's a very relevant question for a character like that. And on the other hand, if you have a character that is either literally ignored by everyone, super unpopular, or just an Einzelgänger, like sort of lonely wanderer kind of character that's just always fading out and never having any long-lasting relationships or friendships, or, not any roots anywhere, is also a character like that just can be prone to very little reputation or no reputation at all.
Right.
And then the question is basically the other way around, right? Like, does it matter if you don't root anywhere or if you don't start to be known by people, right? Or what does that do to you if you are a character that does need social interaction or something, right? Another thing that I'm also interested in this way is particularly the sort of genres that this talks about, right? Because reputation in, for instance, Brandon Sanderson stuff, high fantasy or high sci-fi, political intrigue, kind of big stories, right? Epics like that.
Right.
It's very different than if you talk about reputation that is just in a small town and it's a mystery, and it's, it's both very much about like, what does the world think about you, or how big does the world perceive you? But it's a very different vibe, I guess, or influence that your reputation can have. And I think that's also interesting to talk about.
Yeah, well, like when we speak of scope, like if I'm looking at something like Vinland Saga or One Piece, where you do something incredible in one place and the whole world slowly knows more about you, right?
Right, yeah.
I feel like a lot of main character, chosen one type stories where there's a singular protagonist, reputation often drives the story forward. It's like, now that you are known for this, you kind of have expectations to do this or achieve this. And will you allow your reputation to lead you, or will you continue to redefine it as you progress forward? And I always find it so interesting when like a no-name character at the beginning slowly builds up their reputation, and then what that looks like to other people.
Right.
Oftentimes there's like a very gentle, happy-go-lucky protagonist who's achieved many terrifying, destructive things, and everybody paints him to be like a demon or a monster. Or,
right, yeah.
Those comical depictions.
Yeah, that's great stuff.
Yeah. When I mentioned the significance of reputation as a world-building tool, what I specifically noticed when talking about Calcir was that they said, oh, he escaped the pits of something. And, oh, he has these scars. Oh, he can utilize this metal in ways that has never been used before. And I'm like, well, okay, so I knew nothing about the pits or metal or scars, but now I do. It didn't necessarily have to be explained to me, the whole system behind it. Like, I understand in Mistborn, like, there's a magic that comes through with metal, and I don't really understand the full picture of it. I just know that Calcir is really good at it, right? So like with that, I'm like, okay, so you basically used a character's achievements to teach me more about the setting. Like if you told me that the main character has conquered 2 silver dragons, I'm like, oh, okay, so that tells me 2 things. 1, dragons exist. 2, they're very hard to conquer. And 3,
apparently someone did it.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're using reputation to set expectations for the reader of like, this is a benchmark to power, to authority, to...
Yeah, that's a very good point.
To the ability to speak and achieve. If your character has this reputation, it says something about how other characters will regard them. Yeah. Which is very useful, I guess, when speaking of reputation.
And also it talks about what connotations you have with someone, right? I also was thinking about the character of Luisa in Encanto, the Disney... Right. Or is it Disney or Pixar? I forgot. Well, anyway, the very nice movie, actually.
I think it's Disney. With the music, I'm pretty sure it's Disney.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. I always forget. Anyway, I mean, it's a great film. It's just a very nice film. But specifically, I think her character fits this topic a little bit because she has one very great song that is, she's basically known in the big family that is the main character. I think the whole family should kind of be the main character by now. For her strength and her muscles. Like she's very muscular, she's very strong, she can carry everything, she can hold on. And there's this whole song that Luisa and I think Mirabel is the other character's name. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In which she basically talks about like, okay, so the fact that I am able to hold on longer or that I am stronger compared to all of you means that everyone will just dump their heavy stuff onto me because I can hold on and I can basically take the weight of that. But does that mean that is the only thing that I can do? Or what does that mean if I can't carry it anymore? And that's very nice. I think the lyrics of those were surprisingly beautiful to me because they are kind of talking about that duality as well. And I think it's also relevant or sort of fascinating to think the way that you described learning about the world through a character description or a character achievement like that. Like, how much is a character a vessel for the world and how much is it just sort of a character study or a character information that you get?
Right.
And if it's too much leaning to one side or the other, I think either it means your character is out of balance, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Like, that can be a purposeful thing, right? Like, if your character leans on feeling loved by people, right? That's a very interesting character to write. But it also means like, yeah, I don't know. It's such a tight balance because if we are learning about the world through the characters, it also means that the world itself is sort of leaning on it, right? So if your characters die or if the power shifts, like, can your world sort of exist on its own outside of all these characters doing stuff?
There's always that question was like, how did this world ever survive without these characters? You know, like sometimes there's
how
worlds
is it rolling without you guys? Yeah.
That would truly just self-destruct if the main characters weren't like all-time powerful. And I feel like that does lean a little bit into the second question I had, which is what does a character's reputation speak of their future potential, right? As you said, there's like a balancing act between the character and their reputation.
Yeah.
If their reputation is too big, then there's going to be a moment of humility, right? That you can kind of sense coming where the character is shown where they truly belong.
Right.
I think of something we both got into recently, which is Epic the Musical.
It's so good. I'm so happy we talk about this. Yes, we should talk about it.
Yeah, it's a fantastic song series, a series of albums that's being released over the course of time that turns the story of the Odyssey into song. And it's very nice to listen to.
It's like a concept musical. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. And one of the big things was Odysseus's eventual meeting with Poseidon.
Right.
Until this point, Odysseus has talked himself through every situation, through wile, through wit, through his own tricks and mind games, until he's met with an all-powerful force of the ocean who simply says, now you're just speaking with hubris. Let me humble you. Right. And he sends him 10 years backwards in terms of his journey.
Yep.
There's a point when you can only ride so long on this reputation you have until you have to defend it or like live up to it.
Right.
When characters have a very small reputation or they're otherwise unknown, they can only overachieve. They can only grow their reputation. But once it gets too big, there is a point in the story that's like, okay, we have to dial that back to realistic expectations. Because if they keep matching that exaggerated reputation, they become this larger than life thing that almost feels unrealistic. The suspension of disbelief is heavily tested specifically for the reader or the listener. It's like, oh, they really can just do anything. Then I don't really feel the tension, right?
And then you get into the idea of power crawl, right? Or the whole thing. I feel like we talked about this when we talked about prodigies or like super like ahead of their time characters, where there's a great quote. I'm just going to say it again because it's so great. That Marisha Ray said from the actual play or live stream kind of D&D stream thing that they do. I can't do words today. It's okay.
Critical Role.
Critical Role. Yeah, there you go. She's one of the players. And she said at some point in character, in a very beautiful scene, she said, when you start your life as a prodigy, all you can grow up to is just a regular adult. And I was like, dang, that's rough. And it feels like the same conversation, right? Like if you start off strong, you can only go downhill because you're always going to sort of be, you know, to stay in the spirit of Wrong Rivers, like it's always going to mellow out at the end, right? Like you're kind of, ideally at least for characters, you want to find those counterbalancing moments which will sort of make your character more in tune and more centered like that, right? But if you then start off like a crazy strong, like epic kind of being, yeah, of course you can only become more human after that because you basically start as a myth, right? That's crazy. Like how do you even hold that up even if you wanted to, you know?
It comes down to the author's savvy, I guess, when it comes to writing a story. Like, will they lean heavier and heavier into their reputation, or will they allow humility to come to the main character? And I feel like that's a really nice segue into the last question I have about reputation, which is, does reputation serve a different purpose in a living story versus a pre-written one? This was something, again, I reflected on because I had a lot of time to think, right? When you lay in bed listening to an audiobook. A lot of
Sounds
time to
about right.
reflect, right? I'm listening to the story of Calcier, of all of his wonderful achievements and his feats and his powers and things like that. All this foreshadowing of what he can do and his reputation. And as I was listening to it, I'm like, that's a terrible way to start a character in an actual play. Right.
Oh,
it's
right.
Just like,
yeah, sure.
Like in a hypothetical situation when they're gathering the party in I think chapter 4, they're basically gathering a party for the heist of all time. They got the smooth talker, they got the armsman, they got
that Ocean's 11 scene where it's like, hello, you're the explosive guy and you're the spy and you're going to get us in. And yeah.
And they bring in Calcier, and I'm like, well, this guy's just kind of a jack of all trades, can do everything. So I feel like it's kind of a cheat code.
So what do you need the other guys even for? Yeah.
So I'm thinking like the role of reputation in this story is very different because the author knows exactly what's going to happen to Calcier moving forward. But if this was a living story, if this was a tabletop role-playing game where all your friends are meeting at the same time at a table, that reputation can only really set you up for failure. Because it's such a high bar to live up to.
Yeah, sure.
Right? So when we run these stories for our friends, at least when I speak of it, whenever I give one of my players way too big of a reputation, they know in their heart of hearts, I'm setting them up for failure.
They're going to be humbled. Yeah. I love that.
Right.
That's about right. Yeah.
So have you ever experienced a moment of when reputation kind of takes over, or when your party gets known for something and they get treated different ways or things like that?
Ooh.
Like if your character has something to live up to per backstory or anything
good
like
question.
that.
So the thing that I usually have such a soft spot for in live plays or TTRPGs, tabletop roleplay games, by the way, for the uninitiated, the thing that backstory can do for you, ironically, because of course that's the one thing that's not improvised in these kind of situations. For instance, there can be a scene where the party is unaware, but you as the character that you play with all of the people walk into a tavern, and then the tavern keep is like, man, I don't want you in here. You all can stay, but I don't want you in here. And then everyone's like, wait, what did you do? What happened? What are we unaware of that is suddenly very tense now? And I love those moments when the players are sort of surprised about something that you have, of course, secretly already concocted with the DM. Or maybe it's also a surprise for you and the DM just gives you suddenly this reputation that you weren't planning on. Could also be. So in a way, it can be an improvised situation, I guess. But I love this kind of something traveling ahead of you and you're having to... or you're kind of being forced to catch up your other players or lie about it, which is, in any case, an interesting choice, right? Whatever you choose. And those moments I do really love because it means so much, like you're instantly embedded, right? Into the world or into the scene or into the place or into the whatever situation you're in right now. But you're suddenly super part of it.
Right.
Because the people already have opinions and you literally just walked in. And sometimes that can be a thing where it's just, I don't know, the fact that you carry a big wolf with you. That's a character choice people can make in D&D. It's not a very usual choice, but, it happens.
You're judging me on my big wolf?
If it's in an environment where people are, I don't know, super scared of wolves, or they have been so many wolf attacks, or there's been werewolf myths around, people are not going to like you if you walk into a tavern with a big wolf next to you, So it can be like a literal thing, or it can just be like, okay, I know this guy has had slaughtered so many animals or so many things in the past. I don't know if we can trust this guy. That kind of tension of trust and I know what you did versus I think I know what you did. That's one of my favorite things ever in this kind of stuff.
I really liked what you touched on in terms of surprising people with the reputation. I think that's so fun for them to realize that the world has acknowledged them and now regards them in a certain way. In the same way of building expectations for the characters. Mm-hmm. In my home game, you called this to memory. In my home game, my party had gone on almost a little bit of a streak, 3 towns in a row that they had to leave because it was burning for some reason or another.
Yeah, I remember this part.
You know how I've talked about I have a penchant for lighting cities on fire to get them to move somewhere else.
Exit through the fired up town, yeah.
To the point that when they arrived in a really big city, there were wanted posters of their faces. of like wanted arson or thievery or things like that. So they're like, oh, this is our reputation. We didn't cause any of those fires, but now we're blamed for it. So what they did in response was that in that major city,
interesting,
they went into a coliseum, showed how good they fight, and they started a guild. Their goal in the city very much was to switch their reputation, to replace the reputation for like wanted criminals to that of hallowed heroes in this city, and kind of built up their own sort of street cred in their own way, in their own design. And to do that, they had to integrate themselves with the city. They had to interact with people who lived there and talk to officials and talk to town guards and things like that. So it was really putting that negative reputation on them, put the onus on them. Hey, we have to do something to change that. And the only way to do that is to interact with the world and really integrate itself with it.
Yeah, it's a realization kind of.
Yeah.
Or at least it's a realization of if you don't do anything, this will be what people think of you. That's so great.
It was a fantastic tool to just get the characters involved in the world around them and get invested, because they realized that they were missing opportunities because they were looked at as criminals or as evildoers. And once they swapped that around, it was like doors opened up to them. It was like new magical opportunities were being shown to them.
Very cool.
When I look towards like the question of pre-written story versus living story, I find that in a living story, allowing your players the opportunity to change or alter the reputation is a great way to get them involved in writing the story as a whole, like as a collective. So
for sure. I thought of one more thing that I think, even though we already talked about this, because I love this show, it's Our Flag Means Death. But I feel like it's so appropriate for this one, because for the uninitiated, it's great. You should watch it. It's a gay pirate show. It's beautiful. One of the characters is Blackbeard, or at least, you know, the fiction version of Blackbeard, let's say. And his whole character arc is, I guess, tiny spoilers, but his whole character arc is that he starts off the way everyone knows about him even now, which is, bloodthirsty pirate, feared in all the land, famously ruthless, you know, like many pirates, but especially him, has a great reputation. And then he meets the main character, Steed, who is the softest man you would ever see, like total opposite character. And they connect over the fact that Blackbeard doesn't feel like his reputation fits his inner world, because he's very frustrated that his whole ruthlessness is blown up so much that this is all he is now. And then, you know, what is after that once you've reached a mythical status like that? So his whole character arc is kind of what we talked about a little bit before. Like, if you start as a mythical, crazy, larger than life person, how do you become that person that is more meaningful than the myth? Let's put it that way. And I think it's such a great example. The writing of that show is just so good, where the subtlety and the fact that even though the world thinks if you're not ruthless like that, or the pirate world in this case thinks you can't be a pirate without being ruthless in that way. I like this example as well because it's a little bit of an example of that despite your reputation can still maintain, because everyone who doesn't know Blackbeard still thinks, oh, he's a mythical crazy pirate guy. And everyone who does know him thinks, oh, he has grown soft, right? But then if that means that a character is more in balance, then it's still a good ending of the show, even though the reputation is not changed or people are frustrated by the change in this case, Blackbeard. And I think that's also nice to realize that sometimes the balancing method, I guess, or the way you balance out your character in the end is not always what the world or the reputation wants from your character, but it can be good for your character. And then that still means that you wrote it well, you know? And I think that's great.
Yeah. You know, that ties in really, really well to the prompt, which I did not expect to be leaned into so heavily. Okay. We'll go into it. As with every episode, we end our recording with a prompt. Since I'm hosting the episode, Merla will be the one to tackle the prompt that I have prepared.
Yes, that is right.
Now, here's the prompt that I have for you. And it might be a little bit of a curveball, but just ride with me here. Okay?
Aren't they all? I mean, let's go. I'm good.
So, prompt is, you are being interviewed for a magazine.
Oh, right.
But your publicist has made up a whole bunch of achievements about you that you were not informed of. Make it through the interview.
Amazing. I love this so much. Am I just there for the person, or am I trying to get a job or get like a place in this magazine?
This is a great publicity opportunity. It's like
just a marketing,
you're about to be a
super guest talking
about
their life.
Like think of like Ellen, think of like I don't know. I don't know too many talk shows. Oprah, that's too dated, right?
Sure.
So,
do you think I know more American talk shows than you? I don't think so. I think you're
listen, you can name any Dutch talk shows. I will not know them, but
You'll
I'm sure
literally
I
not know
will
the difference.
trust
Yeah, that's
you.
right. That's about right. Yeah.
Okay, so the publicist just gives you like a thumbs up. This is a fantastic opportunity for you.
Yes.
And here is the scene. You hear the music, the jaunty, cheery music. You hear the audience cheer as the host stands from their chair and says, "Everybody, welcome our next guest to the stage." There's a loud applause as you are walked in, ushered in to this comfy sofa seat. And the host looks towards you, very prim and proper. Their hair is perfectly hairsprayed in place.
Of course.
And they're wearing something very spiffy and perfect. And they look at you and say, would you, please introduce yourself to the people in this crowd who don't know you yet? I'm sure they will know you very, very soon. Just introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here. Truly, truly. Cue applause.
We do the
please.
queuing applause. It's okay.
Okay. Well, you can just edit it in, right?
Yeah, but your name.
Of course. I'm glad to introduce myself. My name is Professor Dr. Mr. McGuffin. I am very excited to be here. I think it's such a beautiful act of, trust. Let's call it trust to invite me in this show of different topics, huh? But I'm glad to sort of bring the knowledge and the intellect a little bit today. I've been in various talk shows that are more, I guess, scientifically related, more about, actual stuff. But I'm glad to spread my, my findings and my intellect to the mainstream, to the public. In fact, I've done lots of research on very important stuff, as you might imagine. It's a very important thing that I'm part of, which I'm going to tell you right now.
Yes, they'll get
marine biology. The Marines are thanking me for all my hard work. I've brought so many new species to light. I've been cataloging the literal sea for all of you to marvel upon. And I think it's very humbling to talk about it to people who perhaps don't know that much about it yet. So I'm very happy to be here. Very, very happy to be here. Thank you.
It is so wonderful to have you, Professor Mr. Dr. McGuffin. I'm looking at this note card that we've been given.
Wow, I made that choice. Yeah, okay.
And what you've said perfectly lines up with our notes, which says right at the top,
of course,
legendary pirate.
Yeah.
It says that you have fought 100 pirates all by yourself. This perfectly ties into your field of marine biology. Could you please expand why this fight was so necessary?
Why? Of course. Yeah, that's totally also what I do. In fact, I've been on, this is totally how this works. In fact, I've been on lots of research vessels, as you might imagine, like lots of very talented people bringing their knowledge to be able to catalog the unknown, let's say. We've traveled far and wide, seen all oceans, the southernmost regions, the northernmost regions. And in fact, if you're on the seas as much as we are, it's almost impossible to not come across a pirate every now and then. I mean, these are big ships we're talking about. We need equipment. We need knowledge. We need lots of money and facilities on these boats. We need submarines.
Of course.
These are big, important vessels that are doing the life's work of many people. And if every now and then, you sort of boat over a vessel that is doing other kinds of stuff, I mean, who are we to stop the sailing towards a greater future by letting them get out of the way, I mean, and also, like, I don't think, honestly, in this day and age, pirates are that well regarded. I mean, I understand that people have their own businesses, and on the sea, it's kind of doing whatever you want, like international waters, like what kind of law does it even, hold? But, I think for the greater good that we are definitely still talking about here, because we are doing the important work compared to people just raiding other people.
Of course.
I think it's important to sort of teach these strangers, these people afloat, a lesson about like actual business and actual knowledge. So, we just take them in, we take their stuff, we make sure that they are educated on these kinds of matters. And if you do many tours like this, years on the sea, yeah, of course you get like, it's going to get boring after a while. Like you need hundreds of pirates are not like strangers to us anymore, you know? So,
just a regular day on the job, I guess.
Yeah.
Right?
They are part of the sea, you know, we're cataloging the sea. So, you know.
Now, what you have signed yourself up for, amazing work, by the way. Incredible that
Thank
you've
you
not
so
only
much.
defeated these pirates, but also partially employed some of them as part of your crew.
Yeah,
Wonderful
like some
work
of
that I'm
them, like
listening to.
a few.
Yes.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
some.
What you are attempting to do to catalog the entirety of the ocean is truly a superhuman feat. But I've heard around the bush that you indeed have a superpower of your own. Could you tell us more about that?
Oh, I mean, yeah, that's, I'm not sure how that knowledge reached you. And I'm honestly not quite sure how much I can say about it. Like,
is this an exclusive for our interview show? Q gasp, Q gasp, Q gasp.
I will just, in that case, give you a little hint, let's say. You know, part of my very, very important, I'm sure we've established that by now, work that I do, research work that I do is submarinal. That's a word, yeah. It's below the ocean. We can't even see most of the stuff we want to catalog. So if we want to truly, forgive me the pun, dive deeper into this, I think it's very important to be able to see anything that you can't see usually. By now, you know, of course, we have the greatest technology to our, I don't know how to finish that sentence in English, available for us. Yeah.
Sure.
There's lots of great tools and the most avant-garde technology to be able to help us in our crusade, let's say. But,
right.
you know, if ever so often there's a person that can just do the radar work, you know, the X-rayness for you in a quick way, that's usually a little easier. So if you can look further than usual people, you know, you can see different kind of stuff. And there's a lot of species that in this way we have been able to identify that previously we wouldn't have been able to identify, you know. So I'm just putting that out there. I'm not saying that I'm that person or that my eyes are in this way gifted to actually see through walls and anything solid. I'm not saying that. So
You're not saying that?
No, I'm not saying that. Okay. Yeah, you're putting words in my mouth now. So what's your next question, huh? I
didn't say it. So hypothetically, if you had this X-ray vision,
which I don't.
I've also heard hypothetically that great power comes with great cost. Is it hypothetically true that this power cost you your one true love?
Hypothetically speaking,
everybody's leaning over in their chair, expectant.
Yeah, I mean, this is what hypotheses are for, right? You live and you learn, you experiment. So every now and then, you know, if hypothetically someone would hypothetically have that power, hypothetically, I think, just
we're starting to lose meaning.
Hypothetically speaking, that might be possible. Yeah, because if you have X-ray vision, like how hard is it to be intimate with someone? Like, am I right? Of course, that's not what my life is like. But I think, hypothetically, it could be possible. I mean, I'm glad that superpowers like that don't exist because we are people of science, obviously. Does that answer your question? I'm sure it does.
It answered as much as I expected it to answer. So let's move away from hypotheticals. I'm just going to leave you with one final question,
of course,
and this is at the bottom of our card. So if you could simply leave us with a nugget of knowledge from your expansive documented work, Mr. Professor Dr. McGuffin, we were clued in, hypothetically, of course.
Oh, more hypothetical as well.
That you know the secret to eternal life.
Well,
and of course, and this will be the last question. We won't bother you after this, but I mean, what an exclusive it would be if you lived up to this reputation of knowing it. What an incredible feat, a personal feat for your legacy.
Yeah, I mean, it is an incredible feat. Of course, it's very hard to believe that it's even true or existing in this, you know, scientifically based, factual world that I value very much. And I'm sure everyone in this audience is very appreciative of.
Right.
But, First off, very thank you for the amazing compliments. I'm very humbled by all of these beautiful facts you found out about me. Apparently, talking to my agent, perhaps, that has, beautifully influenced this conversation. I'm usually not a man of myth, as you might have realized by now. I'm very much focused on the actualities of the world. If, hypothetically speaking, eternal life would be a possibility, I'm not sure if I would be the person who would be able to bear such a thought. I, as a very responsible scientist, would first off be very worried about the ethics of this and about the way that if knowledge like that gets out in the world, things might go ham very quickly.
Ham, yes, of course.
Scientifically ham, yes. So in that way, I would not suggest anyone who has this information to share it with the world. In the case that would be me, which is not the case because we're talking about hypotheticals.
Of course.
I don't think it's very responsible to share anything about it because as a responsible person myself, if it gets into the world, into the bad hands, before we know it, we have a World War IV, World War V, and who wants that? No one. So
no one wants that.
Maybe it's better to leave the marine biologists or scientists, I don't know, I forgot what I said, marine biologists to their work and don't look under the seas for this because we've already got it covered. So don't look there. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much. Everybody give a round of applause for Professor Mr. Dr. McGuffin and the wonderful things he hypothetically has and achieved.
Thank you so much.
Everyone, thank you so
You're
much.
welcome for my presence.
End scene.
Oh, God. Wow. I'm not sure if he even had it. That went all kinds of ways. That was great.
I wrote that down prior to the recording. So when you were talking about Blackbeard, I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
this
fits
way.
in. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's wrap up this episode about reputation. Thank you guys all for tuning in. If you want to speak to us directly, you can always reach us at our Gmail, yourriversarewrong@gmail.com. That is yourriversarewrong@gmail.com. We have a Twitter, technically, that we don't necessarily use, but we do check it out every now and then. YRAW Podcast. That is at YRAW Podcast. And of course, wherever you are, whatever worlds you are building, whatever characters you are developing a reputation for or about, always remember the one simple universal truth.
What is it?
Is your rivers are wrong.
Ooh.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to season 8. Bye-bye.
Hey, we did it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Your Rivers Are Wrong. If you have any thoughts for topics, prompts, or if you just want to share your thoughts, you can reach us at yourriversarewrong@gmail.com. That's yourriversarewrong@gmail.com. Big thank you goes to Martin Skelligans for our intro and outro music. And most importantly, thank you for listening. We hope to catch you at our next episode. Have a good one.